sky before the wedding day. Fate tests Jame and Tu Diep once again. This time not power, not family, but the evil disease is separating them. Tu Diep is pregnant, but the doctor said she may not be able to keep it. Jame is devastated. Can he stand firm? Today we will find out together. James once promised he would protect her forever. It wasn't a vow made in the midst of romance or on a wedding day. It was something deeper. Something quietly powerful. Something he lived by every single day. But fate has its own way of testing promises. And one stormy day in Vietnam, it decided to challenge his. The day started peacefully. Little NHI, their daughter, was sitting with her teacher, learning about animals, naming pictures, and showing off her bright little mind. Her laughter echoed in the room as she correctly pointed out a squirrel, a frog, a giraffe, and even a monkey holding an apple. It was one of those ordinary, gentle mornings where life feels simple and safe. But just a few hours later, that calm was shattered. Around 4:30 p.m., Deep, thin, fragile, and already in weak health, suddenly became dizzy and collapsed. The tropical storm had begun sweeping through northern Vietnam, and as the winds howled and rain lashed against the windows, James didn't hesitate. Still in his house clothes, wearing only a worn-out shirt, a pair of sweatpants, and sandals, he scooped Deep into his arms and rushed her to the hospital in Phu Tho. There was no time to prepare, no time to think, only to act. In the sterile white hallways of the hospital, under the harsh glow of emergency lights, James waited while Deep was treated. Her fever was dangerously high. Doctors administered injections, but one of them went in wrong and caused her searing pain. She cried, from both the physical pain and the exhaustion, and James sat beside her, gently wiping away her tears, telling her, "It's okay to cry. I've been there. I know how much it hurts. Let it out. It'll feel a little better." He stayed by her side, whispering comfort through every tear, through every injection, through every moment of weakness. Later, he left to buy her some porridge, the only food she could eat due to strict dietary restrictions. He fed her spoon by spoon, softly encouraging her to eat so she could take her medicine, though he hadn't eaten himself. He smiled, telling her he'd snack on fruit while watching over her. And even as she struggled with the pain, Deep still found ways to tease him, to make him laugh, their bond shining through even in the bleakest moments. Back at home, NHI was missing her mother terribly. She asked her grandmother again and again, "I miss Co Deep. When will she come back?" Her small voice was full of longing. To ease her heart, they made a video call. On the screen, Deep appeared from her hospital bed, pale but smiling. "I miss you too, sweetheart," she said. "A few more days, and I'll be home." NHI beamed and promised to be good until then. That small call brought light to both mother and child in their separate corners of pain. Meanwhile, James continued managing everything, cooking, cleaning, checking on construction workers building a new shelter for their family after the previous home was damaged. He called his team, gave instructions, all while caring for Deep with the tenderness of someone who knew exactly what she meant to his world. At night, he lay beside her in the hospital room, not to sleep but to listen, to every breath, every movement, ready to call for help if needed. She asked him quietly, "What did the doctor say?" James told her the truth. Her illness was a rare, inherited condition that weakened her immune system. And with the recent storms and sudden weather changes, her body simply couldn't keep up. She had fallen, again, but he reminded her, with tears threatening to fall, that she wasn't alone. "You have me. You have Mom. You have NHI. You have to fight through this." She looked at him and whispered, "Thank you for staying with me. I don't know how I'll ever repay everyone." "You don't have to repay anything," James replied. "Just live well, and love me a lot." By then, she could eat just a little more, plain rice and roasted peanuts. All she was allowed, but James made sure it was warm and ready. He had brought fruit too, knowing she didn't need to avoid it, urging her to eat for strength, promising he would eat later. Every bite she took was a small victory, and in every gesture, holding her hand during injections, wiping her forehead when she burned with fever, whispering encouragement when she doubted herself, James proved that his promise wasn't just words. It was action. It was devotion. Later that night, after settling Deep in, he stood outside the hospital's small cafeteria waiting for her meal. recalling how she collapsed while they were clearing out the temporary shelter earlier that week. Luckily, someone called him in time. She had been burning up with fever. But now, her condition was stabilizing. He brought back a simple meal, the only kind her body could handle, and helped her eat before settling her down again. Then, as he called his team once more to finish the shelter before the next storm rolled in, his voice was tired but unwavering. "I'm here. I'll take care of everything." That night, as he lay beside Diep, gently watching her breathe, the hospital hallway silent around them, he knew that fate could test him again and again, but he would never waver. No matter how hard the storms hit, how heavy the days became, he would stand firm. Because when he promised to protect her forever, he meant it. And in the quiet hum of hospital monitors, in the gentle rhythm of two people breathing side by side, that promise remained unbroken.